Well, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, and tonight we have two very distinguished gentlemen who are going to talk about one of my favorite airplanes. And I know in the past I've talked about the Mustang being a favorite or the Mosquito, but I have a soft spot in my heart for the P-40 Warhawk. Taylor Stevenson and Parker Rathbun, guys, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having us. We're happy to be here.
So tonight we're going to get into a little bit of the history of the P-40, not so much in World War II, but the history of the P-40 within the CAF, because it really is one of the iconic aircraft of the fleet, and it's been around since 1964. So it's a long-serving aircraft, and many people have seen it. We'll talk about that and some of the famous people who've flown it. But more importantly tonight, this is the first of the 12 Planes of Christmas videos that we're going to have. We've got some fundraising to do to help keep that airplane flying. So we'll talk about that, and also maybe get some interesting stories from the both of you about flying the P-40. So we'll take care of that in just a couple of minutes. But first, let's get the business out of the way, and we'd like to welcome you officially to episode number 229 of CAF's Warbird Tube. Now, whether you're joining us for the very first time or you're a very loyal Warbird Tube fan, we're glad to have you with us. Now, if you enjoy the show, please spread it across your favorite social media platforms. We do appreciate that. And Warbird Tube is made possible by the Commemorative Air Force. If you'd like to find out more about the CAF, our events, our aircraft like the P-40, local units, or best of all, how you can be a part of the fun and become a member of the Commemorative Air Force, just visit our website, commemorativeairforce.org. Now, as you're watching tonight, you're going to hear a lot of information about the P-40, especially this particular P-40. But if you have any questions at all, just type those in the chat box, and we'll try to answer them either during the presentation or we'll make sure we save some time at the end before we sign off. And with that, we are going to talk about the Commemorative Air Force's P-40 Warhawk. And what better way to kind of kick things off than a little video to give you some flying highlights of the P-40.
And the Wildcat off of the USS Salamaga.
On the ground, and you're attacked by these fighters here. Nice straight design. Here comes the P-40.
I know, Parker, when the credit was up there, you weren't flying the airplane, but were you flying in some of those sequences?
Yeah, some of those. That really cool shot from Eric where I'm chasing the Kate down, that was at Midland Air Show. And then I was flying a couple of those, and then everything that I filmed this year was at Midland Air Show. My dad was flying at Daniel. And then obviously you can see some shots from a couple air shows where Taylor was flying it. So
yeah,
we all do a pretty good job of splitting shows throughout the year. So we all do about 2 to 3 shows each, if not more.
Very good. Well, for those who are not familiar with it, I mean, we've talked about CAF units in the past, but what's the difference between a unit and a sponsor group?
So the unit is assigned an airplane, so they have a full-on unit staff, so wing leader, operations officer, everything like that. And basically people can join, and it's kind of like High Sky Wing here, where we have the hangar and we have our airplanes assigned to us and everybody works on them. And it's kind of like a flying club in a way, or like a community. With the sponsor group, it's a little bit more airplane specific. So like we have the P-40 assigned to us, and basically we kind of, in a way, buy into it to be part of the sponsor group. And we all basically split the cost of the airplane and the expenses, share the flying duties, the maintenance duties. And so it's more like having our own airplane and we take care of it and share it, than having a unit where you're have more going on than just the airplanes.
Mm-hmm.
Like with High Sky Wing, we have the museum open, we have air shows and events and what so forth. So we're just more airplane specific with the sponsor group.
Very good. Taylor, how long have you been with the P-40 sponsor group?
Ooh, I think almost 10 years now. Yeah, probably actually probably more like 8 years. And to build on what Parker said, a sponsor group structures is excellent for aircraft like the P-40, the Wildcat, Gunfighter, some of these aircraft that we really tour across the country, and it allows us to be a little more nimble and be on the road. But with that, we don't have the support system that a normal unit would have. So it's kind of incumbent on us to market the aircraft so that we build the funds for the aircraft. Otherwise, like Parker said, we all cut checks at the end of the year to make sure that the CAF has this aircraft flying.
Let's talk a little bit.
Go ahead. Well, to add on more on that, a lot of the sponsor groups are still with units. Like with the P-40, we're with High Sky Wing. We keep it in the High Sky Wing hangar. Gunfighter, they're a sponsor group, but they do a lot of touring with either the B-29 Squadron or Doc the B-29. And then they have the unit up in Omaha at Council Bluff, where they do a lot of their end-of-year maintenance. So it all kind of works together in the CEF ecosystem.
It certainly does. Let's talk a little bit about the history of this particular airframe, the P-40 that we see with the fleet today.
So our P-40 is a later in model. Taylor did another episode of Warbird 2 where he gets into a lot of the details. So we'll kind of breeze over that. But ours was originally a Lend-Lease airplane for the RCAF, for the Canadian Air Force. So it went up to the Aleutian Islands and flew patrols against the Japanese up there. So in these pictures, you can see it's in the RCAF markings with the roundel, and this was later in the war when they really stopped painting them too. So it was bare metal with just the necessary markings on it. And it is a later in model, so it's got the kind of sleeker look to it. They got rid of the 250 cals that they had up on the cowling. You can see like the B's and C models, they had the 250 cals up top. This one, they streamlined it a lot more with that cowling. They moved the rudder back about 1.5 feet for the vertical. So you can really tell an end model if you just look at the tail. With the earlier models, the vertical is lined up with the horizontal. So all three kind of meet at the fuselage. But with the end model, for stability, they moved it back about 1.5 feet and made it a little bit longer, but kept the same wheelbase and really kept a lot of the same design. You can actually see when you take the fairings off where the original vertical mount was. And ours, even more specific with ours, it was a -5, so it had the one-piece canopy, and it had the earlier in models, they had stripped it down, so they took a lot of the backup systems out, took a lot of the armament and bullet proof stuff out. And they actually took a 50 cal out, so it was only 250 cals in each wing. And some guys didn't like that as much, so they actually, for the later models, they went back to 350 cals in each wing. And Taylor probably has some more that he can include on that, but that's kind of the rough idea of what the end model was.
Yeah, it's really like you can see on this one, like Parker was saying, see how the vertical stabilizer and the horizontals all meet at the same point. If you go back to the previous one, you can see that vertical is moved back quite a bit. And so that's for everyone, we call them short tails and long tails. Everything before the M model, as in Mike, is a short tail. And the N is just it's the best one. It's way more stable. It's about 50% lighter on the ground. I mean, it's that extra 1.5 foot really is great. But no, Parker hit the nail on the head. I mean, the great thing about the CAF's P-40 is it's not only an AVG history lesson with, Tex Hill's paint scheme. He was a great friend of the organization as well, but it also is a unique history into the RCAF, and also the fact that not many people know that the Japanese invaded U.S. homeland and North America in the Aleutian Islands. So we really can leverage this aircraft as really a multifaceted history tool.
So, and then after it ended its Air Force life, it was brought on a barge back over to Seattle. And that's where it was registered as November 1226 November. And a lot of those P-40s ended up in Seattle. You'll see a lot of the P-40s we were talking about earlier where they have November and then kind of the 4 digits and then N on the end. So in this picture right here, this is 1223 November. It's an earlier E model, like Taylor said. This is actually the Yanks P-40. After ours was registered for civilian use, they used them for weather modification. So that was either cloud seeding or just whether they'd fly it up and look at storms and stuff. So they started using them for weather mod. And so our P-40 was owned by a guy in Oklahoma, in Norman, that used it for his weather mod company. And I believe it was for cloud seeding. So they would dump chemicals overboard and try to change the way that storms behave. So they're still doing it nowadays, so it may still be working. But really interesting history for the aircraft, because normally when you talk about warbirds that were used for work in civilian world, you usually think of like the DC-3s, which became cargo airplanes, or you think of the A-26s or privateers that were used as fire bombers. But even like P-40s, the single engine, single seat fighters, had a role that they're using them for in civilian life.
So how did it go from being a weather modification airplane to being part of the CAF fleet?
So I think in the next picture, it will, you can see where a guy named, it went through a couple owners. It went to a guy named Junior Birkenau in Paris, Texas. He had a bunch of different warbirds over the years, and his son, Ike Birkenau, is still very active in the warbird community. It went to him for a bit, had a landing accident, went to a crop duster. He flew it for a little while, and he actually had an engine failure and landed in the field, and kind of was like, well, I don't really have any interest for it anymore. So a 27-year-old Mike Dillon bought it for $800 as scrap, and gathered a bunch of other P-40 parts, got a guy to overhaul the engine. And so the red P-40 was born. And Taylor talks about a little bit more in his episode, Warbird 2. But Mike he flew it for about 4 to 5 years. It was painted this really cool red, just looks really sleek and fast with that paint job. I love the polished prop blades in this picture. But Dillon, he had it for a handful of years, and then Taylor actually has the bill of sale. In 65, it went to the Confederate Air Force, and it was actually the second P-40 that the Confederate Air Force had. The original P-40 was November 1228 November, another N model, and it was the one that had there's the bill of sale from when Lloyd Nolan bought it. The original one was another N model. It was actually the white one with the blue and red stripes on the wingtips and on the tail. That one was lost in a accident when the guy tried to do aerobatics with the flaps down. And so they ended up buying this one from Mike Dillon in 65, and it wore the red paint job for a while. They did paint shark's teeth on it, and they put some colorful stripes on the wings and on the tail, kind of like the other airplanes. So it did that for a while, and eventually they did paint it in the AVG paint job. So and it was a CAF airplane for a long time. Lloyd Nolan flew it, Lefty Gardner flew it, and it just became another one of the fighters in the fleet. So like this picture here, it's in formation with red nose.
Red nose, yeah.
and another Mustang in the background that was actually a guy out of I think that was a Mustang that lived in Texas for a while. It was a guy named Satterfield, and I think this is Joe Engel flying it here. And so in the next picture, you can also see one of the earlier paint jobs. Taylor and I talked about this earlier, but kind of a made-up paint job for 8VG. It still has the Hell's Angel and the Flying Tiger on the tail, but like the stripe on the tail, they just went with a kind of an AVG type paint job, and that's kind of it. Really never left the AVG paint scheme after that. So it's kind of changed hands throughout a couple of years. It went to Ollie Crawford for a very long time, then kind of went to Ray Kinney, and then Mike Anderson out of Muskogee, Oklahoma is the current caretaker or like head of the sponsor group. And Taylor, did I miss anything out of the history?
No,
of it?
I mean, I always loved this paint scheme because they chose the 2.6 from the N number. And I always thought this is so iconic. I mean, it's Joe Engel, X-15 pilot for y'all Warbird nerds out there. He's flown faster than any of us will ever hope to do. He's a commander of 2 shuttle missions, and he's flying our P-40, canopy open, in formation, no headset. It must have been louder than all get out.
Yeah, I was telling Steve earlier, I can't even run it without a helmet or ear protection on. It's such a loud airplane. Sounds awesome, but once you get above idle, it just is deafening.
And when you're, especially with a helmet on, when you're on takeoff or landing, and some of us crank it open to get for egress and all that stuff, but your head's sitting there in the wind. I can't imagine flying formation with no ear protection and nothing on.
He looks happy about it, so I guess it worked for them.
Well, you can't not be. It's P-40, man.
There you go. So for both of you, when you sit in that cockpit, when you advance the power and you start taking off, do you ever think about the first of all the founders of CAF who flew that airplane, or someone like Joe Engel, famous astronaut? I mean, does that ever come into your mind as you're rolling, or are you just concentrating on flying the airplane?
So for me at least, those thoughts come after. Okay. When you land and you've only been up for 10 minutes, but you're soaked in sweat because you're hyper focused. You are flying an asset that's a very valuable asset, not just in terms of dollar amount, but in terms of the history and what it means to the CAF in particular. But after the fact, you kind of sit there and you're like, man, that stick grip, Mike Dillon, Lloyd Nolan, Lefty Gardner, I'm sure Connie Edwards, I'm sure all the founders of this organization. And then you get folks like Joe Engel, Ollie Crawford. I mean, it's amazing to think about, but no, we strive to have, not only in our group, but in the entire CAF, the professionalism that when you get in the airplane, your demeanor changes, you're hyper focused, you've got mission set. Just, it's, you don't really think about it at the time, but there's a lot of reasons why you'll see Parker and me hop off the wing after the fact, and we got a big old smile. It's for really
a couple days after too.
Yeah.
After you fly an air show, you're pretty excited about for the next couple days. For me, it's more when I pre-flight the airplane. I'm kind of around the airplane at air show. I think about stuff like that, and but you think about guys who flew at the history of the airplane, what this airplane's seen, because it's been in civilian hands longer than it was in the military. But the second you kind of hit the starter, you really don't think about anything. And it's kind of cool. You really don't think about anything until you pull the mixture to shut it down. You're kind of focused on what you're doing at the time, whether you're flying an air show or flying with Toro, about frequencies and what your
Parker will attest, and I'm sure any other P-40 or Allison pilot will attest. You hit the starter and then you're just sitting there going coolant temperature.
You kind of, before you hit the starter, you have to have a game plan about where you're taking off from, what your taxi route is, how quick you can get in the air. So Taylor and I will probably lose a couple years off our life just from the stress of having to worry about coolant temps, but it's totally worth it. But you call for taxi before you even start the engine. You talk to Air Boss and say, okay, let me know when, and you have one of your marshalers stand there. And so the second you hit that starter, you kind of have a timer in your head of, I have to be in the air in this amount of time. So it makes it even more exciting.
and it'll tie in later to the coolant discussion, the radiator discussion. But there shows that it's so bad, high altitude in the dead summer where you're at a Air Force base that you have a 2-mile taxi to get to the end of the runway, that will actually have the marshalers tow us down to the end of the runway to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they're really good about that, and all the CAF marshals we fly so many shows, they know the routine, so they'll hook up to us. And I did that at Dias Air Force Base this year because Dias is so huge. So they towed me out and get me set, and you're kind of out there for a bit, and then especially when you're flying tour, you just kind of wait till you see everybody headed inbound and you crank up, and usually can be out pretty quickly. So you kind of feel like you're scrambling to intercept some Japanese fighters. So it kind of adds to the excitement of flying the airplane. So that was kind of the P-40 through the years. Now we're into the era that we've been in for since about how long has Mikey been head of it? Since 2014 or 16 or so.
Yeah, probably 15 or 16. Ollie Crawford was pretty much late 80s through when he retired in the early 2000s. My dad flew with Ray. Mikey came on, and he's done a wonderful job. He had an FBO up in Muskogee, so he was able to house and support the aircraft for a number of years. And then now it's, as Parker mentions, it's a tenant of the High Sky Wing.
Yeah, so we're happy we keep it in the High Sky Wing in the Midland Army Airfield Museum most of the year. That's where we do most of the maintenance, and kind of its headquarters. It'll go out on the road and it'll stay with whoever's flying it, and eventually end its way back here. And we love having it on display. So that's kind of the era now. We've the paint job that you see here, they did a big restoration of the aircraft in kind of 2020 to 2021. And Taylor talks about it in his episode of Warbird Tube, where they did a lot of research and had a lot of original information about how they painted it. And so that's kind of our mascot for the airplane now, is the Tex Hill version of the Panda Bear. It's a really cool story about how each of the guys had their own version of the Panda Bear, because they were the 2nd Pursuit Squadron Panda Bears. So on the airplane, they had an artist draw up each of their customized mascot. So this one is obviously Tex, so it's got the 6-shooter and the cowboy hat and the cowboy boots. And so we actually have stickers of that made. So we usually hand those out to people when we're at air shows, and kind of the theme of the airplane to me.
And my favorite is the number 48 that was Tex Hill's, not to get too into the paint scheme, was it actually was wrecked before their first combat missions. And one of my favorite memories was being at the unfortunately all these guys are gone, and we don't have quite the presence we used to, but we used to have the autograph tents. And I remember Charlie Bond, who was another AVG ace, making fun of Tex Hill in front of everyone for wrecking number 48 before they ever even got into combat.
So this is a good shot of the current paint job. So we've got the Flying Tiger on the left side and Tex Hill Panda Bear on the right side. And we've got Tex's signature under the cockpit, which is a stint. I'm happy that we have a stencil of it. So we're able to always keep that no matter if we change the paint job. And it's just a massive conversation piece. You're sitting at an air show and people want to come up and they ask you about the little details of the airplane. Like everyone always asks why there's half a kill marking on the cockpit. So you get to tell them about why that is. And they ask, are you Tex? Like, no. So you get to tell them about Tex Hill. So that's what I get the most, is if I'm Tex. So and it's just a really cool thing.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter if somebody's into warbirds. I mean, obviously, all of our audience and us, we know what a P-40 is. But I've had so many people. I say, yeah, I fly, a P-40, and they, oh, okay, the one with the shark teeth. They go, oh yeah, no, I know that airplane. So and you go to a mall or something now, and the shark teeth is still on backpacks and shoes. I mean, it's crazy, just the iconic nature of what the RAF created, and then the AVG took on. So
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned Tex Hill's signature, and you have the stencil, but he actually signed one of the earlier paint schemes, correct?
Yeah. So the previous paint scheme actually, and I'm as purist as it gets. Come take a look at my L5 or whatever. But But when they were repainting the plane the previous time, Tex Hill picked out all those colors. Now it was a 90-year-old memory, but he picked out all the colors, and then after it was painted, he went and signed it. And so obviously when we restored the aircraft, we were very meticulous in taking that autograph that he signed and tracing it. So it'll always be on there.
Yeah.
Cool feature of the airplane. And of course, I love the end model. It's a little bit sleeker than the earlier P-40s, and the shark's teeth just do it justice. So I'm glad that we picked out this paint job, and it always is a favorite at air shows. So, and I think kind of following this talks into the current stage of the sponsor group. So we have 5 pilots currently that are part of it. Mike Anderson right here. He, of course, is head of the sponsor group. So he's been taking care of the airplane for a long time. And so he still flies it. This is him taking it to Oshkosh. He's, of course, also president of Warbirds of America. So he was really excited that he was able to take the P-40 and be the first fighter to show up and have it at Oshkosh. And then, of course, we have Sam Graves is another pilot that flies the airplane. I think he has another job he does outside of flying it. I'm not really sure. Of course,
he spends a lot of time in Washington.
Yeah, he's a congressman out of Missouri, and of course, he's head of the transportation committee. So he does a lot of good things for aviation as a whole. He's been a driving factor behind a lot of the changes recently, like the reauthorization bill changing the light sport category, the medical categories, and everything. So he's a really good. He's been a long time Warbird pilot. He's flown for a lot of different organizations and has a lot of experience. So really happy that we have him in the airplane. So this is this year at the Brunswick, Georgia Air Show. We took it out for the Golden Isles Air Show, and he tied it in with some of his other duties. We had a lot of people come out, take pictures with the airplane, and had a little party in St. Simons with a bunch of his friends. So it was a really, really cool experience that we get to have him on board. And he does an awesome air show in Tarkio, Missouri, the Wingnuts Air Show. So it's always out there for that show. And of course, we have Daniel Rathbun, my father, that flies the airplane. He got checked out in April of 2022. So that was kind of when we started taking care of it in Midland. That was kind of where it stopped being in Muskogee for year round and started being in Midland year round. So he got checked out in 2022. And of course, I got checked out in October of 2023. So we were the 2 newest additions to the sponsor group. But we're not the first, I'm not the first second generation P-40 pilot. And Taylor can talk more about that. So this is kind of modern day. We've support the airplane flying air shows or taking it to fly-ins or any other event that they request us to be at. So we've had a really good couple air show seasons the last couple of years. We kind of spend a lot of money on the restoration as a sponsor group. And so it's been good that we've had a solid couple of years of air shows, putting money into the aircraft count. And so this year we did Dyess Air Force Base, Brunswick, Tarkio, Missouri. It was up at Oshkosh in the Phillips 66 tent. We did Slayton Air Show. We did Midland Air Show. I got to take the airplane out for the first Roswell Air Races, which was super cool. I was really happy with how the event went, and they were really excited to have the P-40 out there. And we had a really great showing for the CAF as well. We had the B-29, Yellow Rose, the B-25, and the P-40. So that went really good. And then we did have a couple little mechanical issues that kept us from a handful of shows. So we're going to hit the off-season maintenance really hard. And we already have a really full schedule ahead of us for next year. And we'll probably add some more at ICAST. So
Very good.
Really excited to do that. And so this is where the airplane lives now. It's in the Midland Army Airfield Museum. Where the Kate is in this picture, where 310 is normally where we keep it. We have a P-40 corner where you can see the Allison on the stand, and we have some really good stands that have a lot of information about the Flying Tigers and the P-40. And we have 2 tour airplanes that live there, and a bunch of T-6s and a Vietnam airplane. So it's we're really happy with how we've been able to build the museum up the last couple of years, and the P-40 has been like the perfect addition to keep in the hangar. And so this is at Roswell this year. Flew. We were supposed to fly 3 performances. We got weathered out for one of the days, so we had 2 performances at Roswell. Got to fly the course, and we're pretty prominent too in the parking area. So I stood next to the airplane all day, and I probably talked to about 200 people that came by and asked questions about the airplane. And you get to have some really interesting conversations with people there. People always come up with some unique questions, and it's kind of a cool part of flying the airplane is you're not just a pilot, you're the steward of it. So you share the history and try to kind of share it with people is kind of what our mission is right now for the P-40 sponsor group. So going past the home pylon at Roswell, that was pretty cool. I was crowned myself as the unlimited champion for the year since they didn't have unlimited class. So
why not? Why not? So when you're talking about, being at an air show or an event and talking to people, has anyone ever come up and just absolutely stumped you with a question? Or you, Taylor?
I mean, there have been some questions that I didn't necessarily know the answer to, but what I've found is, and this is, I grew up in my, you get your parents say, hey, you play video game, don't play video games, it's a waste of time. Man, these kids that play like War Thunder and some of these games, they know the most intricate details of these aircraft. And so you'll get a kid that's 8 years old come and ask you like, hey, what power settings do you run on takeoff? And you're like, or what dash number Allison is on here, or do you, what's your processes and procedures? Do you do this? And they'll know stuff that you could only really know from looking at the manuals, and that's what a lot of these kids do. But no, I think for me the most we're getting away from having the guys that flew them in combat walk up to you, but it's the folks, my dad's generation, my parents' generation that are coming up and saying, hey, I knew my dad flew a P-40, or I knew my dad flew a Mustang, or what have you, but I never knew this is what it is. And so we've been able to share it with a lot of folks that might be their only connection with their parents, and even taking guys for rides in, say, our T6s and stuff, whose parents were in combat. It's they realize what these men endured overseas, and it's just such an excellent teaching tool. And again, with we fly a lot with Tora. We're both Tora pilots, and being able to tell the history of not only what happened, but what this airplane represents to our future, and telling us like, hey, we need, this is a tool to support active duty Air Force and Army folks to be vigilant and make sure we protect our nation. It's not just a fun thing to go take around the Reno track, which I'm jealous you got to do, Parker.
Yeah, I still think Roswell was really fun, but flying a Tora show in the P-40 is probably the most fun you can have, because it's obviously a really fun air show act to fly and fun to watch. But when you're flying the P-40 pattern, you're kind of in this unique position where you're flying the outside course of it, basically. And so you're kind of in this third-person point of view watching a Tora show happen, and you're watching the pyro, watching the Kates doing their duster turns and the zero track. And then you roll in, and you're in the middle of it, and you're in the smoke and fire and all the other airplanes going by. And then you pitch out, and then you're back watching it, kind of watching everybody do their thing. So it's been really cool to get to fly it in the Tora act. And the picture before, we obviously had a pretty prominent showing at Oshkosh the past few years. We were in the Phillips 66 tent. And so I hung around that quite a bit and answered questions about the airplane, and saw a lot of pictures online of it. So Phillips was really good to us. They gave us some oil for being up there. And so we're happy to do it, and happy to kind of have that brand affiliation with Phillips and share the airplane with people at Oshkosh. So it was definitely something cool to see the airplane do. And of course, the other picture is the most fun, flying Tora. And we took it up to Tora practice, get all of our qualifications in for Tora. And it's also just a good chance to get current in the airplane and get to fly it in the air show environment and kind of get ready for the season. So lately, and that's how we got us. How at least my dad and I got associated with it, with the P-40, was through Tora, because it's basically like this right now, because a lot of the same pilots are flying Tora. There's some guys that fly the P-40, so they're kind of unofficially bound together. So we're happy that we piggyback off a lot of Tora shows, and we booked the P-40 separately, of course, but it's a chance for us to book more shows because we're affiliated with Tora. And it's also more fun because we also fly Tora, so we're just going and hanging out with our friends that fly Tora. So it's definitely an awesome opportunity. So definitely a good partnership.
Now, both of you have done a lot of research on the P-40. Taylor basically has his own museum, his hangar. But John Elliott is wondering, can you both recommend some good books on the P-40 that would be good to add to his library?
There's a good book about the Flying Tigers. It's the history of the Flying Tigers. I can't remember the author. There's, of course, God is My Co-Pilot by R.T. Smith. Was that Robert Scott? I think it was Scott. Scott. Yeah. And there's one I found. It's called The Pictorial History of the Flying Tigers, and it's just a lot of cool pictures over the years of their, like, the little details, like their flight jackets, or just kind of how the bases looked and everything. I thought that one was a cool one. That was recommended to me by a friend. But there's a lot of good Flying Tiger books. There's a couple more that I've been seeing that I haven't seen before.
Don Lopez has a great book of his time flying the P-40. He, of course, ended up being the director of the I think he was director of Air and Space Museum. And I don't have any specific titles, but I would encourage you to actually look at other books. The Flying Tiger gets all the credit, but the Royal New Zealand Air Force, the Royal Australian Air Force, the Air Corps flew them quite heavily in the Southwest Pacific. There's a lot of great, kind of branch out on the history, because I'm a Flying Tigers guy through and through, but this aircraft served with so many different of our allied powers and so many different theaters of the war that truly there's no one good book, because you could spend your lifetime learning about it.
Yeah, and it was the only fighter to fly in all the theaters. Yeah, American fighter. It flew in every theater of World War II. So the Kiwis really loved them, and that continues today. A lot of the new parts and everything we can get for the P-40 come out of New Zealand. Yeah. And there's some really good videos on YouTube of them operating the airplane, and it's kind of was an iconic airplane for them. Of course, there was a bunch in Australia, so it's just kind of known worldwide. So, and there's kind of a transition to we talked about the important people over the years that have flown the P-40. So right now I consider myself kind of just holding the seat until Teddy gets all of his qualifications to fly the airplane. So
that's my little guy. He's 2. Yeah.
So he probably will know more about the P-40 before I do.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
So he has the potential to be the 3rd generation P-40 pilot from your family.
Yes, he does. Yeah, my that was the day my dad checked out on the in the lower picture, and then the day I checked out. So not only is it I talked about when you're kind of holding the stick that a lot of the CAF greats and American greats held. It's one day my dad's not going to be here, but it'll be a connection to him. So it's something that the aircraft are more than just metal. It's and I get goosebumps talking about it. It's American history, it's personal history, and it's just, there's a presence about these aircraft that you can't help but feel when you're around them or operating them. So so I'm very blessed to be 2nd generation P-40 guy. I grew up with Ollie Crawford and Ray Kinney, and it's just I consider the CAF P-40 to be a family member. Because it's some of my earlier memories were crawling around it, and obviously you'll see my little guy, some of his earliest memories I'm sure are going to be supporting the aircraft as well. He's telling me to get out of the way, by the way.
Yeah. I think that's just awesome.
And
here's a real throwback picture.
Yeah, this was something I didn't learn until this year. This is Tommy Reedy flying RP-40, obviously with the 26 on it pretty early on. But Tommy Reedy was the guy that started Tora, and he's CF Hall of Fame, and he was the first guy to see all these old movie props in there and say, hey, maybe we should do an airshow act with them. And so I never knew until earlier this year. His son Dan Reedy, of course, is a Tora pilot. And we were sitting at dinner at a Tora air show, and he showed me a bunch of pictures of his dad flying the airplane, and I never knew that, so I thought that was really cool. That just a number of people in the early years of the CAF that went through the airplane and got to fly it. So I think it's almost as cool for our airplane about the CAF history of it, about how many different people got to fly it. And of course, I think the next photo is Joe Engel. We talked about him, space shuttle pilot. Test pilot for the X-15, and he flew in Tora, so he did the same deal. He was flying Tora shows in it, and I think I read that within the same calendar month, he flew a Tora show in it and went to space. And so a lot of the early Tora history and CF history had a lot to do with astronauts like Fred Hayes and the guys that were down in Houston where the airplanes were, so they got to do a lot of flying with it. So here's another photo of Joe Engel flying it. He flew it for a long time, and just recently passed, but he was still around in his later years. He got to see him at Oshkosh one time. He was checking out the CF P-63, so I think that's a really awesome part of the airplane's history. And I think
this was the first time that it was converted to Tex Hill's paint scheme number 48, because Tex was a good friend of not only the CAF but specifically, you know, Ollie, Dad, Ray, Joe, all the P-40 pilots. So pretty much wherever you found Ollie, you could have found Tex and Maisie.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, here's another one. This was from all the Breitling stuff that our airplane got to do. But again, 3 generations basically of P-40 pilots. You had Ollie, who flew it the first time when he was 19 and flew it till he retired at 80. And so he was a longtime pilot of the airplane. Of course, to his right, to the right is Ray Kinney, another steward of the airplane, and he took care of it for a long time. And basically was a segue from Ollie to Taylor, because he was still associated with the airplane whenever Taylor started getting involved with the sponsor group.
Which is something that, you know, the CAF in general, but I think the P-40 specifically is incredibly good at is, you know, a kid will come up and think that flying these aircraft is unobtainable, but with, you know, perseverance and more importantly, a mentor, you know, the opportunities are still there. And so I was very blessed to have Ray as a mentor, and he was extremely blessed to have Ollie as a mentor. And so that's something that we're still doing today. I mean, obviously, Parker, how old are you now? 25?
25.
25. So you started flying it when you were, what, 23? Now, with that comes, you know, Parker had several hundred hours of T6 time prior to that. So you're not sacrificing the prerequisites, but it's putting people in a position to be able to achieve their dreams. That's what we're really focused on. And as you can see, I'm sure from some of the photos in here, you know, we've got a lot of young folk that are real active at supporting this aircraft.
And this talking about being a steward of the airplane, this was R.S. Bearclough, or Bear as they called him, and he's basically the crew chief and mechanic of the airplane for over 20 years. Whenever Ollie Crawford was flying the airplane, and you can really go back to a lot of the different CEF airplanes, like Fifi or Red Nose or any of the airplanes, and you just start looking back at the history, and there was little eras of the guys taking care of them and keeping them flying, and that's the reason that we still have the airplanes today. And so I think that's one of my favorite parts about the history of the CEF airplanes, is it's something bigger than yourself, and you get to hear stories about guys that were taking care of the airplane before you were even born. And Bear basically kept the airplane going for over 20 years, and I think he was really we wouldn't have the airplane with us today if it wasn't for guys like that. So, and that you can trace that through all the CEF history. So one of the most important things about it. And this is Ollie's last flight in the airplane. So from what I heard, he really didn't tell a whole lot of people that he was retiring, but he brought it to Midland Air Show when he was 80, and got out of the airplane and said, well, this is it. Like, this is my last show. So this was at Midland. They had the water cannon salute, and Taylor had some really fun history about it.
Yeah, he was still and he was still flying like L-39s and stuff into his mid 80s. So I mean, he was a very much a I'm gonna stop on my own terms. But yeah, seeing his last roll in the airplane at Midland and then taxiing across the ramp with the fire department spraying water. I mean, it was a pretty neat event. But he's really the last, because he was in 1945. He was 19, so he probably would have been one of the younger guys to ever fly the P-40 during World War II. And so he truly was the last of that generation to fly it. But what a great guy. And he's the reason why we have an Air Force Memorial in DC as well. Not many people know that. He spearheaded that.
Wow.
And probably the highest time P-40 guy. It'd be hard to beat his amount of flight time. And so modern day, have a lot of good guys that help us take care of the airplane. My dad and I kind of coordinate most of the maintenance, but we have Jose from Vintage V12s. The motor is by him. And this is Jose and Jonathan, one of his mechanics, he's younger at it. He's been there for 16 years, really knowledgeable about the airplane. So this is him doing a house call, what we were calling it. So he shipped his tools to Midland, and he was on his way through town. So he stopped for a day and spent all day. We were out at the hangar for about 10 hours, went all through the engine, and he's really good about showing you how to take care of it and making you do the work. That way you can do it for the first time under his guidance. And so I learned a lot that the couple days we worked with him and with Jonathan about timing the mag and checking torque on the banks and checking distributors and just overall little tips and tricks about keeping the Allison going. So he left a lot of notes for us. So I'm really happy that we have those. So this was, we do a kind of interval maintenance. We do every 25 hours, we do an oil change, oil analysis, check the Kuno filter, which is basically a bunch of little magnetic discs that get any particles or anything that comes through the engine. And so this was right before Midland Air Show. I had the peanut gallery watching us put everything back together. So they were all, like I said, you can only have one guy on the ladder at a time. So we kind of were taking turns, safety wiring stuff and installing everything. So it was a lot of fun. And so one of these photos from Gary Daniels, the other was from Kelly Hudson, our air boss. He was laughing about all the young guys were taking turns working on the airplane. So it's really fun to work on. The maintenance manuals are amazing because they've just got so much information about it. And of course, those things are written for guys who were off a farm in Iowa, and now they're in Europe somewhere taking care of a P-40. So you have to have this maintenance manual written for guys like that. So it kind of helps people like me who look at pictures and go, okay, this is what this torque spec is supposed to be. This is how this is supposed to go in. So it's really rewarding to get to work on the airplane with Dad and learn about it and just problem solving and kind of going through all the systems and everything. And it's really advanced for the time period that was built. It was a 30s design, but it's just so simple. Everything's an O-ring or a crushed gasket or it's all mechanical. And kind of one of the last era, even the Mustang, you start getting more of the automatic features like the coolant door and oil door and everything. So this is all same deal with flying it. It's all manual. The airplane doesn't do anything without you telling it to. So you kind of feel cool when you're moving all these levers and moving around the cockpit. And
and that's going to bring us to sort of where we're getting together tonight, and that is the 12 Planes of Christmas, because you're trying to raise some money to do some additional maintenance things for the airplane to make sure that it continues to fly for the next 75 years. But what are some of the things that you're raising money for this year?
The two main things, overall, it's just having a maintenance reserve fund. We've had two really good airshow seasons, but we're not a two-seat airplane. We can't sell rides. So we kind of rely on donations and appearance fees and everything to put money in the account. But we have some bigger maintenance costs coming along. The exhaust stacks are kind of are probably a immediate need to address. the metal at the time just wasn't like the perfect metal you could get. It's what they had. And of course, probably the guy welding them, that was his only first time welding exhaust stacks, is like, here's your job. So we just find some of the welding just wears out pretty easily. The metal, it sits there and vibrates. It's been going for 80 years now. So it's just the metal parts are starting to get worn out. So like you can see how new stacks from classic aero machining look, and then how our stacks look. They do clean up pretty nice. Of course, you get the soot off the stack in front of it, so the front one is kind of how it really looks. But we find just little cracks in them over time, and we have spares, but we just you don't have any more after that. You don't have new parts coming in. So that's kind of our most immediate need is exhaust stacks, and of course, they're not cheap to have this advanced part made. So Taylor's got a demonstration of why they cost so much to make. He's got props.
Well, yeah, I've got props. So you don't realize that, well, first of all, this is an unserviceable stack. You can see how it's almost like just a big clump of welds at this point. So contrary to what you might think, a Mustang or something being a later aircraft, more advanced, you would think that the stack design would be more complex, but this is kind of a modified one. But it's basically a Mustang stack's basically 4 pieces. A P-40 stack has, I think, 12 to 15 individual pieces that need to be made, one machine base, and then the rest of them are now we'll make them out of stainless, but it's like 12 different parts that have to be welded together. So each one of those welds for the 12 different parts is a point of failure. So you can imagine, after 80 years, I consider exhaust stacks to be a consumable part. And so anyway, and they can't just be pressed. They have to be like basically rolling dies that you make this incrementally, this curvature. So it's a lot more complex of a piece than you think it would be to produce. So like Parker said, we're reaching our end of our inventory, but the results coming out of Classic Aero Machining and their partners, down in New Zealand, and they're basically using modern materials, modern welds, better processes, and you're getting an incredible result. And so not only have we seen not only are they proven on other operators' aircraft working today, but they're so great that Parker spearheading, working with other operators to try to get a group run together to be able to support several aircraft, not only our own.
And so we've had some where we can re-weld them. The metal's still good, and I've taken some over to Azell Aviation, to Chad Azell. He's been able to re-weld a couple that we have for spares. But you just need to invest in making the tooling and having all the machinery to make them. So that's kind of where we're at right now. Is luckily there's guys that have the means to make all this. So it's just, we'd like to put some money in the aircraft account to get the parts made, but also have some left over for our overall maintenance cost.
And it's important to consider too that if we get a crack on one of these right before a show, it's not the end of the world. We can weld the stack, but we miss that opportunity for revenue for the aircraft. So that's the big deal. Is it allows the aircraft to make money to support itself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the immediate one. But also we talked about radiators. It's kind of the thing everyone knows about cooling issues with the P-40. And you start and you have to be on your way to the runway and get air going through the radiators. It's fine once you get in the air because you have air going over those massive radiators, but it's not like the Mustang where you've got the doghouse in the belly scoop where it gets better airflow. So if you're not flying, you're not cooling the airplane. And so ours does pretty well, but we're still running on the higher end of the temperature spectrum. And so we never go above red line, but we're just kind of closer than we'd like to be. And so now you can get new manufactured radiators out of New Zealand. They're called replicors. And so again, modern material, better metal, that more efficient heat transfer, and just an overall better design. So a couple operators have these radiators already, but of course the price tag is pretty hefty. And so like we talked about, I've probably this year at the National Warbird Operators Conference, we're going to start putting together a kind of P-40 collective, more focused on P-40 operations and trying to get group orders together. That way we can bring the unit cost down by having probably 5 orders or 6 orders. So that's kind of our game plan too, is I've talked to a couple different P-40 operators, whether it's Vintage Flying Machines or Palm Springs Air Museum, or the American Air Power, or whatever the New York Museum is. So just talking to those guys and trying to get together a better idea of how we can keep the airplanes running for years to come.
And I've flown them with replicors, and it's like 20 degrees cooler than a stock radiator, which is a big deal. And the P-40, like Parker hinted, it has approached what the Mustang is as well in terms of supportability. So Australia and New Zealand, and some manufacturers here in the States, now you can basically get any part for the aircraft, but it's only through airshow revenue, donations, and campaigns like the 12 Planes of Christmas that we're able to make sure that the best parts are on our aircraft, because it is the best and we want it to be the best.
Very good.
So
Mark, who's watching tonight, Mark Abel, going back to the history of the aircraft, why so many different names? Warhawk, Tomahawk, Kitty Hawk?
It kind of depended on the operator.
Yeah.
It was the early models were called the Tomahawk. That was mostly the B's and C's. And then you got to the export fighter version, which was the Kitty Hawk. So you had the Brits and the Canadians that called it the Kitty Hawk. And I don't think the Warhawk really came kind of into the later models, like the M and the N. And that was mostly the American name for it. So it just kind of depended on who was operating it and what model of airplane it was. So ours was a Kitty Hawk Mark IV.
Yeah, the long tails, I've always said, that's how you know it's a Kitty Hawk.
David is wondering if it's possible to make the exhaust stacks via 3D printing.
Yeah, I don't think we're there yet.
It's just sure kind of the material.
Yeah, it's I don't think we're there. There are some shops that are going the 3D printed route in testing and stuff, but we're really not there yet. But it's a great idea, and he hits the nail on the head of the reason why we have great supportability is because of modern processes and procedures like CNC and hopefully in the future, 3D printing.
Yeah, and 3D modeling too. Yeah. A lot of the stuff is drawn in CAD now, so there's a company that have the entire P-40 in CAD drawings, and so it's mostly about going to a shop that has the ability to take the CAD drawing and put it down. But you just run into tooling. You spend, like I talked to Zell about this, the shop, they spend more time making tooling than actually making parts. You have to spend a lot of time making the tooling to make the part, then you can make the part. So it's just kind of the nature of working with metal is it's a lot of different processes and steps.
Well, very good. Well, we are just about out of time tonight. If folks want to keep track of the P-40 sponsor group, maybe make a donation or find out where you're going to be, how can they keep track of you?
We do have the Facebook page and the Instagram page. So we're CAF P-40 sponsor group on Facebook, and we're CAF P-40 on Instagram. And of course, as 12 Planes of Christmas comes around, you'll see we'll be the first airplane on that. Yeah. So that'll be the page to make the donation. And we do have some matching donors and everything for the fundraiser too. So that's kind of we're going to try to do better about posting about shows we're at, what our schedule will be, and just overall operations of the airplane.
Very good. Yes, watch for that. Watch for the announcements when the 12 Planes of Christmas opens up, and your chance to help out the P-40 Warhawk sponsor group and make sure that beautiful airplane continues its history. Gentlemen, as you pointed out, it had a very short history with World War II, but after that, it has had a long and illustrious career, and we want to see that continue into the future, especially with the tour performances and the solo performances. And I suppose for the both of you, the more air shows you get to fly, the better you feel. And with that, we will wrap up our show for tonight. Thank you for being a part of the festivities. And as we kick off our 12 Planes of Christmas, you remember, if you have any thoughts on tonight's show or something you'd like to see us cover in the future, just drop us email at media@cifhq.org. And always, if you liked what you saw tonight, please share it across your social media platforms. We do appreciate it. And if you do subscribe on YouTube, make sure you click that bell icon. You'll get the notifications when our next episodes are posted. So until next time, for the Commemorative Air Force and for the P-40 Sponsor Group, I'm Steve Buss. Have a great night.